Welcome to the Polygamer podcast, where gaming is for everyone. Join us as we expand the boundaries of the gaming community.
Hey, this is Ken Gagney with the Polygamer podcast. Thank you for tuning in today, the day before American Thanksgiving. As you are all headed to your family's house for Thanksgiving, I hope you're looking forward to this podcast, because it's one I've been looking forward to for months. One of the artists I admire the most in the video game industry is this week's guest, Taylor Davis. She is a violinist who has become renowned for her covers of video game, anime, and movie theme songs. Her music videos combine these very artistic and gorgeous settings and backdrops and costumes that reflect a real intimate knowledge of the medium she's drawing inspiration from and a real passion for those pastimes as well. She's done everything from Final Fantasy to Zelda to Mega Man, as well as a variety of her own original music as well, and a Christmas album in which you finally get to hear her sing. I wish she would do more of that. As you can guess from this brief introduction already, I'm a big fan. In fact, I saw her on her very first ever tour just 2 months ago. I made a 2-hour drive out to Western Massachusetts and 2 hours back on a school night because I was so excited to go see her. I'm also a backer of her Patreon, where I pledge to her every month, and I backed her on Pledge Music, which is sort of like Kickstarter but for music, to help fund one of her recent albums. But enough about me, a bit more about Taylor. She started playing violin in 1995 at the age of 8, and it was always a part of her life pretty much up until she graduated from college and pursued a desk job in public relations. And then she finally realized after a while that if music was not a bigger part of her life, she was going to be miserable. So she slowly started building up this online portfolio, and it got to the point where she quit her day job in the hopes that she could make a living out of her music. For the first 6 months, she didn't make any money whatsoever. But then her first album came out and saw enough success to reaffirm her belief that yes, she could do this for a living. Now, a few years ago, she went on Patreon, where she now makes $2,000 per music video. And that's important because a lot of these music videos she either cannot monetize at all, or at least not nearly as much as her own original music. I know as a Let's Player that, for example, whenever I shoot a video of a Nintendo game, I can't put ads on that video and make money from it because all the visuals and audio in that Let's Play video are copyright by Nintendo, and I monetize it only as they allow, and they do not. And so some of the same licensing and copyright issues exist when creating your own original arrangement and performance of somebody else's music. In this case, the video game developers and publishers who make the games that Taylor draws some of her inspiration from. Thanks to Patreon, she can fund these elaborate music videos and justify doing so without ending up too much in the red. Links to Taylor's YouTube channel, her Twitter, her Patreon, her online store where you can buy her albums from iTunes and Bandcamp and more can all be found at taylordavisviolin.com. You can also hear some of her music in the background to this very interview. If you'd like to find more interviews, episodes of Polygamer air every second and fourth Wednesday at polygamer.net, where I explore issues of equality and diversity in gaming by interviewing the individuals like Taylor who are doing unusual and phenomenal things with video games. So thanks so much for listening, enjoy the interview, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving. This evening, I am so super excited to be speaking with one of my favorite musicians, the world-renowned violinist, Taylor Davis. Hi, Taylor.
Hi, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time. I know that you must be so busy and so exhausted having just gotten back from your first national tour.
Yeah, I know. It was definitely a lot of traveling. I've never toured before, so it was something new, and it took a bit of getting used to, but it was a great time, and it's nice to be back because I'm already starting work on some new YouTube videos and also prepping for a new album that I'll be releasing next year. So it's nice to be home too and be able to start working on those things.
Oh gosh, that's so many projects you just mentioned that I can't wait to hear about.
Yep.
Let's start with the tour. I mean, you do have a very prolific and popular YouTube channel, but your tour gave you the opportunity to interact with your fans in person. How was that?
That was amazing. Honestly, I wasn't really prepared for that because so much of what I've done so far has just existed online. And I've only done a few live shows here and there, some of my own live shows, some things I've played at anime conventions or various industry events. But it's all just been, one-off type things, nothing like this tour. So this was a really amazing experience. And my favorite thing about it was just being able to interact with people. And, it's really exciting because on normal days like today, I'm home alone with my dogs and I'm just working on projects by myself. So I don't get to see people that often. So it's really nice to be able to get out there and actually interact with people, and especially people who are interested in the kind of music that I'm doing, and like-minded people. And it was an awesome experience. I feel very grateful that I had the opportunity to do that, and that I'll be doing more of it in the future as well.
It's so wonderful and in a way bizarre that there are people who are into this, because 20 years ago, I can't imagine that somebody could have made their living doing the kind of music that you do.
I know. I mean, it's fairly new to me as well in terms of seeing people interested in this kind of music, or I'm always kind of a little bit surprised because I was very much in the minority growing up listening to this kind of music and getting excited about video game, film, anime type stuff. And now it just seems like there's tons of people who are interested in it, and it's awesome to see. It's not only people who are playing the games and watching these shows, but people who just really genuinely enjoy this type of music. Like I had a few people come up to me after the shows on this tour that said they've never played any of these games or watched these shows, but they just keep watching my channel because they love the music. And so I think that really speaks a lot for the quality of this music. And it's nice to see that it's getting a little bit more notoriety and just people are seeing it for more than just, I think a lot of people used to think it was all beeping or whatever. When you say you like video game music, a lot of people don't associate really great soundtracks with video game music, but I think that's starting to change now, which is nice.
And you didn't originally expect that this would be your living. You graduated from college with only was it a minor in music?
Yes, I just did a minor in violin performance for scholarship reasons.
And if I may ask, what did you major in?
I majored in public relations.
Oh, fascinating. I mean, I'm sure that must come in to play in a variety of ways in your current social media marketing.
Probably not as much as people would think, because a lot of what I did with public relations, it was a little bit more, I would say, out of date in terms of, social media was just starting to become a thing in terms of companies using it. When I was in college, Facebook was only open to people who had like a .edu email address. So I think it shifted maybe after I was a junior in college or something like that, but it wasn't as widespread as it is now, for sure. So my education in that was much more traditional. There was just kind of a lot of writing. It was more journalistic almost. So really, I haven't used a whole lot of those skills as much as you might think, because I know a lot of people say that, oh, that must be a big help to what I've done. But a lot of it has just honestly been learning from the internet and reading different forums, watching different tutorial videos, YouTube, of course, too. So I would say I'm pretty much internet educated as far as my music career has gone.
Or I can imagine that's true, because anything you learn is outdated the next day because social media moves so quickly.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's like that with a lot of industries now, and especially with this. I mean, there was no YouTube. I forget when YouTube even was a thing when it came out, but I mean, it's a fairly recent thing in the scheme of things, and so it's not something that I even grew up thinking, oh yeah, maybe I could be a YouTube musician or anything like that. It's a very new thing, so you just kind of have to learn it on the fly.
So you had a desk job that you quit because you wanted to make music more a part of your life, and for the first 6 months or so, you didn't really make much money on that. What was your cutoff date at which you decided, okay, you know what, this actually isn't going to work. I made it a stab at it, and now I don't have to wonder what would have happened if I had tried, because I did try. How did you know when or if you had succeeded?
Well, when I had quit my day job, I kind of just gave myself the opportunity to make that first album, which was Gaming Fantasy. And I just wanted to see how that did. And if that had totally not sold at all, or if people just weren't interested in it, then I probably would have gone right back to some sort of business job. It took about 2 months before I could actually see any sales data, because there was quite a bit of lag time between when you upload an album to some of these sites and when you actually receive any income from it. So it was kind of a little bit of a scary time waiting after I'd released it, because I really had no idea how it was doing. And, it wasn't at all like a Billboard charting album by any means, but it was enough for me to feel encouraged about continuing down that path and feeling like, if I created another album at that point, things would start to become a little bit steadier and a little bit more stable feeling. And then that's kind of just been a little bit of my business model over the last few years, is just putting out the albums, because YouTube ad revenue, until June, I wasn't making anything off of my YouTube views. A lot of my videos had advertisements on them, but that was because a publisher had claimed that. And so they were actually making advertising revenue, but I wasn't making anything. So a lot of people think, too, that if you're getting millions of views on YouTube, that automatically means that you're just getting rich. And that's totally not the case for most people on YouTube. It's one of those things where you kind of have to be creative and find a bunch of different ways to piece together a career, because YouTube itself generally doesn't offer people enough income to live off of.
And is that because so many of your videos are covers of other people's music that you're not able to monetize them?
Yes, exactly. So when you're doing cover songs, YouTube takes its 45% cut off the top. And then if you're doing cover songs, there's a share that you have to split with a publisher. And then if you're trying to monetize that, if you're doing it the right way, you're also connected with a multi-channel network. And so you're paying them a percentage too. So actually, when you actually get down to the final payment, it's a very small percentage of the overall. And, it's not something that I will complain about at this point, because at least I'm making a little something. But I always just reinvest what I make on YouTube back into my videos. And the same thing with the money that I'm receiving on Patreon. That's been an awesome website, and that's pretty much been the reason that I was able to do all these higher quality videos more often, because I have a great group of supporters on there who are giving me a certain amount of money per video just as a support structure. And that's really changed the way that I've been able to make videos. So I really appreciate that.
But if the videos themselves rarely recoup the cost to make the video, why do it? Do you see it more as a marketing vehicle for your brand?
Yes, it's definitely so people know about the albums, because the albums have always been where I've actually made my living. And so it's just kind of like a marketing tool for selling the albums. And also, now that I do have this audience, it's one of those things that, if I didn't have this large of an audience, I wouldn't have been able to start touring. And even though that audience online doesn't necessarily translate into dollars online, it translates into the ability to do these live performances. And, with the touring too, I'll be honest, I didn't make money on this first tour because it's so expensive doing a tour. And we did this on very much, a budget. But it's one of those things where, at this point I am making enough with my other sources of income to where I can experiment with different things and, see what I like. And there's so much value, I think, in just having that in-person interaction with my audience. And I loved it. I have no regrets with it. It was a great experience. And, hopefully it will build into something where it could, turn into another part of my business that is making money someday. But for now, it was something that I just really wanted to do and enjoyed doing, and think that it was, totally worth the investment and would do again.
Are you familiar with the group Pomplamoose?
Yes.
They went on tour about a year ago, and half of that group is also the co-founder of Patreon. And they published a really exhaustive blog post breaking down all the revenue and expenses for their tour and how they basically broke even or even came at a loss.
Yeah, they actually did lose a bit of money. I read that article as well. And it surprises a lot of people, but, I had no idea what all went into it until I started planning my own with my management team. And yeah, it gets expensive really fast, even when you're not doing anything crazy with it. Like, I had 2 people with me, and that was it. I had a tour manager and my piano player, Salome, and we did things on a budget. I mean, I didn't have any lighting or any production that I was traveling with. We had the projector and the screen, but a lot of the time we used whatever the venue had, and we used whatever the venue had for lighting every night too. And just if they had somebody in-house to run it, great. And if not, then we didn't have that lighting. So yeah, and it's just still, I mean, it gets pretty expensive because you're paying for all of the travel costs, all of the, transportation for different gear or shipping of merch, and you're paying crew salaries, and then also just everything like hotel stays, car rentals, things like that. So it really adds up quickly and surprised me. But, thankfully it wasn't, like I said, for me, it felt like more of an investment, and I was happy to do it.
I teach an undergraduate college course in online publishing, and one night my students and I had a discussion about piracy, and they said that they felt it was okay to pirate music because they made up for it by buying concert tickets to see that musician. But it sounds like that's not exactly an equitable trade-off from your perspective.
Definitely not. When you're just starting out, especially, and a lot of people too. It's hard to get the word out that you are on tour. I would get messages throughout the time that I was touring where people were sending me things saying, "Oh, I had no idea you were going to be in Seattle," or "Oh, I had no idea you were going to be here." So it's surprising because even the people who are following you closely on social media, as much as you're trying to market it and get out the word that you're going on tour, they still miss it. So it's really hard to get people to come out to see a live show and to get people to know about it first off. And then, when you're just starting out too, the ticket prices are so low and you're, like I said, it oftentimes is a loss for people who are just starting out. And a lot of people don't talk about it, I think, because I don't know if it makes them feel like, it puts them in a bad light or it looks like a failure or something. But yeah, I'm very open about talking about this kind of stuff. And it's not for people to feel bad or anything like that. Because like I said, other parts of what I'm doing are doing very well. And I feel very grateful that I'm even able to have a career in music. But, I think it's interesting for people to know that, just because you are touring, especially when you're starting out, does not mean that you're, at this level where you're all of a sudden, making life-changing money or anything like that.
You mentioned your management team that helped you put together this tour and also your wonderful pianist, Salome.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find or build this team that supports you in everything you do? How does a team like that come together?
Well, my management team I found through my agent, and my agent was somebody who I had initially talked to a few years ago, and I never signed with them at that level. It wasn't to the point where I really needed an agent. And then I actually got reconnected with her about, when was it? It was last March from Peter Hollins, my really good friend, because that was his agent. And so I reconnected with her and we were talking about touring because I had just done these other live shows last September and I really loved it and wanted to do more. And she was willing to take a chance on me and was excited about it. But she said if I was going to do a tour, I needed to have management. And I have never had management up until this past April. I've always just managed everything myself. And so I wanted to find the right people. And my agent, I really trusted her. She recommended these guys from Works Entertainment. And when I met with them, we just clicked instantly. Like, there's such a great group of people. It's a smaller management company, but they do really great work and they're nice people. They didn't want to try and change me or anything that I was doing. A lot of my stuff is very PG too, and I like to keep it that way. And, I know that's not necessarily what sells all the time, but they were totally, on board with just keeping everything the way that I've been doing things, but just enhancing it and helping me build off of that. So it's been a really great fit, and they were really helpful with the tour and everything. Definitely wouldn't have been able to do that without them. So that was, just kind of random through different connections. And then Salome, I had met through this project that I was a part of. It was a video game rock band, and she was the piano player that they had got on board for that. And so that was a completely random meeting as well. And we clicked right away, and we've stayed in touch. We've known each other for about 2 years now. And, we just get along so well. And she's such a fun person and great musician, obviously, too. So it was really fun to have her on the U.S. tour, and she's going to come on tour in Europe with me as well.
That rock band, was that Critical Hit?
Yes.
Are you on their album?
I am on the first album, yes.
Okay, because I didn't realize until today that you were involved with that group, and I've been listening to that album for years, and I didn't realize it was a Taylor Davis album.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, I was... you can't really hear the violin very well in a lot of the songs, but I was the violinist in that whole album, yep.
Wow, that's great. I mean, I love seeing some of my favorite musicians collaborate, and when I went to the Critical Hit website just today and looked at the roster, it's practically a who's who in the video game music industry. It's amazing.
Yeah, it was really cool to be a part of that for a time. I actually don't perform with them anymore, but I wish them the best, and I was able to meet a lot of really awesome people through that group, so it was a fun time when I was doing it.
So you've done cover albums, you've done your own original music, and you worked with Critical Hit. You mentioned at the top of the show that you have a new album coming out next year.
Yes, I haven't started working on that one yet. Technically, I'm just kind of doing some pre-production planning for it, and there's like two different directions that I'm thinking about going with it. So I haven't really made any announcements about it yet, but I'm excited. It'll be a little bit different from my normal albums. It'll still be similar covers in terms of like the video game, film, anime stuff, but in a different style. So I will give you guys more information once I actually have a stronger plan of action.
When deciding what music videos to shoot or what albums to cover, as you mentioned, the licensing causes some kinds of music to be less profitable for you. Does that play a role in deciding what you're going to shoot or record next?
Sometimes it depends, because all of the music videos that are covers, I mean, it's pretty much all on the same level. You want to choose videos that you think are probably going to do well, or that your audience is going to enjoy and watch. I usually, like I said, I'll never make that money back through the videos themselves, through the ad revenue. So it's just one thing to keep in mind. That's why a lot of people will ask for some very obscure requests. And of course, if I have the time and the funds to do like every song ever that I wanted to do, that would be awesome. But you do have to be strategic and realistic when you're choosing to do these more elaborate videos, because they are very expensive and time consuming, and it is something that you just kind of have to be careful, because I've learned a lot through posting various videos or various songs, some that I thought were going to do really great that ended up not doing very well, and then others that I really had no idea were going to do well that ended up doing great. So it's really hard to predict. There's not really a formula to it. It's just kind of doing your best guess and everything.
So if you could feed solely the artistic side and not have to worry about the finances, what song or video would you record regardless of whether or not it would do well?
I don't know at this point, because I feel like I've done a lot of those already, or I've at least experimented with certain genres that I've wanted to, and just seen how that's gone without having any idea whether or not it was going to do well. I can't think of anything necessarily on one of my albums at this point. I would definitely like to do some more Final Fantasy VII in the future, and because that's my favorite game of all time, and there's so much great music from there that I would still like to cover. Not necessarily something from one of my albums that I've already put out, but probably a new arrangement of something. But I'll probably save that for when the new game's coming out, or the reworked version of Final Fantasy VII is coming out. I'm very much looking forward to that.
Are you concerned that they're going to screw it up?
Of course. I mean, it's just, sometimes remakes, just don't really live up to the hype. And since this is my favorite game, I'm definitely going to have high standards. But I'm excited. I'm at least excited to see what they do. And I think at least visually and with the audio too, I'm really excited. I hope that they kind of reorchestrate the whole soundtrack. That alone will be really cool. But, I just hope they don't make too many drastic changes with the game, because then it would just feel weird.
Now, you have recently begun contributing to the actual video game soundtracks, haven't you?
Yeah, here and there, occasionally. It's definitely not like a big part of what I do, but it's something that sometimes just happens very unexpectedly, and it's all come from my videos, all these connections. So that's, another thing with the YouTube videos. It's just the more you're out there, the more people are seeing it, and then you can maybe get on board with some of these other projects. But yeah, that's really exciting. I love doing that. I never thought that I would be on any video game soundtrack, so that's a really exciting thing for me to get into as well.
What video game franchise would you love to work on, other than Final Fantasy?
That's a good question. The Witcher one was pretty huge for me, and that was very unexpected. I had no idea that I was going to get asked to do that. That was very exciting for me. And that's one of my most favorite games now, The Witcher 3. So that was truly an honor. I think maybe one of the Elder Scrolls games, that would be pretty up there for me too. I think that would be really neat. Or a Kingdom Hearts, I think that could be amazing as well.
That would be awesome. I, for one, would buy those games just to hear your music.
Well, thank you.
But you mentioned that The Witcher 3 is one of your favorite games. Does that mean that amongst everything else you're doing, you still have time to play games?
Occasionally, I will definitely make some time. I don't play very often, and when I do, I usually kind of binge play a little bit just to get through it as quickly as I can. I would love to be able to have unlimited time to just enjoy the games fully and everything. And I still did. I felt like I got a good amount of time out of The Witcher 3, and I'm looking forward to playing the expansion. I haven't had time to play that yet, but I'll be trying to fit that in a little bit this weekend. But yeah, on a regular basis, I usually, I think most YouTube people just work a lot, and I try to have a pretty good work-life balance because I'm married, and I really enjoy hanging out with family and friends and things like that. And it's easy to get sucked up into your work, especially when you love it. It's one of those things where a lot of times it doesn't feel like work, but then you're also kind of, giving all of your energy and time to something besides your family. So I definitely try to have a good balance there. But, I definitely make time to go out to a movie occasionally or, watch some anime at night, and we have wind down time. And my husband, he works a more regular job, he's at an office. And so that helps to, keep me a little bit regulated, because then when he comes home, I won't be working into the late hours as much, unless I have a project that's, really coming up or something, or preparing for a tour. On a regular basis, I try to keep a little bit more regular hours. And so then, we'll fit in some time for gaming. And we also play League of Legends together, and he has some friends at work that are really into that game as well. So, we'll try and do maybe a couple of games of League per week too. So that's fun.
Has making music your full-time job, including practicing 2 hours almost every day, made music any less enjoyable? Does it ever feel like work?
Not so much the music portion of it, but everything else. I actually haven't touched my violin for the last week because I've been doing so much business stuff. So it's,
wow.
Yeah, it's mostly, I would say in a perfect world, I would love to have more time to practice. And that's something too, that having the management team and kind of offloading slowly some more responsibilities onto them, it would be, great, because then I can have more time for actually just creating the music and everything. But, I still handle all of my social media, most all of my publicity. I did hire a publicist for a couple of months for my tour, but that was it. And then, everything else I'm doing on a regular basis. Like if people are asking questions and I'm answering, that's me. It's not someone that I'm paying to answer for me or anything like that. So that's important to me, to be able to still maintain that fan interaction and everything, because that's how I started and how I felt that, I had a close relationship with my fans. So I definitely want to keep doing things like that as well. But I would like to have a little bit more time for actually playing the violin and creating music and everything too.
One of the things I love about your work and your music is what you just said, which is that it is you interacting with fans. Like, you and I have exchanged comments on Twitter and on Patreon, and it's great to know that you're so accessible to your fans.
Mm-hmm.
Any musician, though, will have their critics and detractors, and in the gaming community, they can be especially virulent. What does criticism look like for you, and how do you deal with it?
It's interesting. I would say, honestly, I have a really, really supportive and positive audience overall throughout all of my different social media stuff. I will, of course, get the occasional trolling on all of my different sites, but for the most part, I have a really, really nice audience, and, I don't see too many nasty comments. And for the most part, I also don't really read all those comments all the time. I will usually stay, the first 2 days that I release a new video, I'll try to answer as many comments as possible. And then I'll check back throughout the year on those different videos. But I have over 140 different videos out now. So it's way too hard to try and keep up with all the different comments, and then also have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, all the other sites too. So I really pick and choose, and I'm very accessible, obviously, on Patreon. Twitter is a little bit more manageable because those are very quick interactions, things like that. But, of course, you'll see some really messed up stuff sometimes. Any YouTube person will see just some heinous comments, and it's kind of laughable sometimes, and then sometimes it can be a little bit disturbing. But at this point, I'm very used to not seeing negative comments all the time, but when they do happen, I'm used to having seen those things. And so it doesn't affect me the same way that it did when I first started. It really makes you sad the first few times you see something like that. But, you kind of learn to just brush it off. And, haters gonna hate is one of those things that you kind of have to keep in mind.
Well, good. I'm glad that you've developed that attitude about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was one of those things too, where early on I would get so upset if somebody made a negative comment or just made some nasty trolling comment. And then, I would want to respond to that one. And then, I would take a look at all the other nice comments that I didn't have time to respond to. So I kind of made this pact with myself that I wasn't going to give those people attention because that's really all they're looking for. It's like, if you're not going to answer and give attention to all the nice people and all of the really positive, supportive comments, then you shouldn't be giving the attention to the negative people. So that's where I just pretty much ignore it at this point.
That's awesome. I'm glad you do that. So we're just about out of time, but I want to ask you about your European tour. Can you tell us when the dates are and where to find out more information about it?
Yeah, so everything is linked through my website. It's just taylordavisviolin.com/tour if you want to go specifically to the tour page. And that has all of the ticketing links. I have 2 types of tickets, just regular tickets and then VIP upgrade tickets. The tour starts in Berlin on February 19th, and it ends in Dublin, I think, on March 6th. I think it's the 6th. So it's a little bit over 2 weeks, and we're getting to, I think, about maybe 11 different countries on this tour. So it's going to be pretty jam-packed, and we're not going to really have any substantial days off. So it's going to be a lot of traveling, but I'm so much looking forward to it because I have such a large audience in Europe. It's actually larger than my audience in the US. And I know that people were pretty disappointed when I announced my US tour, but not any European tour dates. So it's really nice now to let them know that I am coming over there too. And I'm very excited about that tour.
Now, I know you and I have very different audiences, but my YouTube analytics are about 85% in the United States. How do you know that you have an audience in Europe?
From the YouTube analytics, there's all sorts of information in the account, and also on my different social media sites too, like Facebook. An incredibly strong audience in France, which is awesome, and I have some really wonderful people who have put together all of these various fan groups for me within their own countries, and then they translate all of my posts into their native language, which is so nice. Like, huge shout out to all of those people because, they're really making what I'm doing a lot more accessible to people who don't speak English because, unfortunately, like most Americans, I only speak English. And so I wish I could communicate better with my different audiences, but thankfully I have some really great people helping with that. But yeah, YouTube analytics and all of that just kind of, it's a lot more heavily in Europe. And then Mexico and Brazil also are other places where I have really strong audiences, so that's pretty cool too, and I hope to get there someday as well.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad I got to hear you when you were on tour. I went to your very first stop in Northampton, Massachusetts. It was a great night.
Yes, it was so nice. I'm so glad that we got to meet in person like that.
Me too. And your audience in Europe has a real treat in store for them. If anybody needs to get tickets, as you said, just go to taylordavisviolin.com/tour. And they can also find you on Twitter at violinte and on patreon.com/taylordavis. Taylor, anything you want to leave our listeners with?
Just, huge thank you to anyone who's been listening to my music, sharing it, or just supporting me in any way over the last couple of years. I always say this, and it's so true, that the reason I have a career is because of all of my wonderful fans who are supporting me in all the different ways. And so I just so thankful for all this, so grateful to be doing touring now as well. And of course, I'll be still keeping up with my regular YouTube uploads as well. So if I'm not visiting where you're going to be, then you can still see me on YouTube. And hopefully I will be able to visit your country or your city in the future if the touring keeps going well. So just huge thank you to everyone for helping me get to this point.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time and best of luck on your tour.
Yeah, thank you so much.
This has been Polygamer, a Gamebits production. Find more episodes, read our blog, or send feedback at polygamer.net.